Show of hands, who's done glitch hunting before? Okay, show of hands, who's good at it? Yeah, that's what, no, put that back down. It's okay, we're gonna get better at it together.
We're ready to
All
go.
right, we're ready to start.
All right. Hello, GDQ. And hi, YouTube. Okay, this will be
Yeah, they're not
recorded.
gonna
It will
talk
be
back.
uploaded later. It is not being live streamed. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Our panel today, we're talking about speed running, glitch hunting, tricks to find tricks, and tips to find skips. I'm Oride. I am a longtime runner and glitch hunter of Okami. And I have some co-panelists here today who very graciously contributed to the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Hi, my name is Witherman. I run Sonic Adventure, primarily Sonic Adventure, 1998 on the Sega Dreamcast. I've been glitch hunting pretty much since I started because the game is very unexplored, and I'll be talking about a lot of our discoveries and how they got found.
And I'm Ashley930BTW. I mainly run the game Control from 2019. I also run Nier Automata and some other random games here and there. I don't really think of myself as a glitch hunter, but what I find is that whenever you spend enough time with a certain game, you eventually will find things about it that are in fact useful and glitches and not quite intended. In addition to us three, we also had a couple of other contributions from Aoyark. He is the former world record holder from Nier Automata, and Wayzone, he's a former record holder from Half-Life 2. Another thing I just want to say, we at the 11th hour had some very unfortunate technical difficulties, but we have been preparing for the worst, so we're going to do the best that we can and just roll with the punches. So, ready to get started?
Let's go.
All right.
So to start us off, all games have tech, whether you call it glitches, skips, tricks, strats, exploits, setups, mechanics, just cheese, whatever you want to call it, all games have it. But the question is, how do
these
people
people
find
this
fun
stuff?
You see this asked all the time under YouTube videos or in Twitch streams or even in the audience. So the answer is that there's a method, but where do we start with that method? Well, the first place I'm always going to tell you to start, if you have a game that you want to break, you want to study it, is to look at what people have done before you, and that's what we call prior art. So you want to know what's already known, you want to talk to the existing community members, and it doesn't just mean the speedrunning community, and we'll get into that a little later. You want to find and maybe create and improve resources based around that existing knowledge, whether that be wikis, text guides, video guides, tools like cheat engine tables, or even other stuff that might be related to the game, calculators. If you have data dumps or any kind of data that you can collect by just playing the game, maybe like how many attacks does it take to defeat each kind of enemy, or if you have collision visualization or anything like that, anything that lets you get a better look at all the different facets of the game, all of that, it might already be known, and if it's already known, it should be collected in a nice, convenient, searchable resource, maybe not just in a channel in your Discord server. Do the best that you can to maintain and create those resources. Talk to related communities, like I said before. If there's a modding community, if there's a archipelago community, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big communities that's been contributing a lot recently that I've been seeing is archipelagos. So the Archipelago Randomizer Project is a multi-game randomizer project where you can play multiple different games all in one session. And that has inspired a lot of people to get really involved and creative with how their randomizers are both made and how they interact with them. So through Archipelago communities, lots of different games, like at this point, well over like 20 or 30, have all had some sort of optimization found just out of the stance of casual players playing the game so much. And I mean, that's really the root of a lot of ingenuity as well. It's just repetition. So a lot of glitch hunting comes from a lot of places. It doesn't just necessarily come from the most like top level runners all the time too.
And then another thing I wanted to add is maybe your game doesn't really have a big speedrunning community. Maybe you don't have any tools, but pretty much every game has some sort of modding scene, especially on the PC. So that's really a good resource for looking at just ways and figuring out how the game works. And then most importantly, always ask questions, right?
Absolutely.
If you ever don't know anything, there are people out there right now who might know, and you can ask them. And even if they don't know, that's a good breaking off point to start learning.
And so, expanding on that, first thing is replication and testing. You want to talk about that?
Yep. So there's lots of cases where the community thinks they know something. There's knowledge that's repeated, sometimes for years or even decades, and it turns out that that isn't true.
Just literally wrong.
Yeah, you shouldn't just assume that stuff about your game is true if you haven't replicated it. Doesn't mean you have to be relentless and take nothing for reality, but it does mean that there's a lot of stuff that if it's difficult to say, you might want to try it yourself. You should be retiming things. If there's a route that's assumed to be a few seconds faster, maybe it's actually 30 seconds slower, or the vice versa. If there's a strat and you don't know exactly, does it save time or not, give it a try. And a good example here, we have a game called Drakengard 3, also called DoD 3. You want to pull up that first video?
I believe this is it. Yep.
So this is actually a clip from an emulator developer for the PS3 emulator. And you can see he's doing a little tech where he's doing a bunch of light attacks in the air and then canceling them. It's a movement tech, and it looks pretty fast, but turns out that the speedrunning community didn't even know about this video for a while because it was totally unrelated. Some random emulator dev who was trying to show off the game just happened to try this, and it worked. And then eventually the speedrunning community found it. But then there's an issue where they knew about this video for, I think, several months, but no one had timed if it was actually any good. And then eventually they timed it, and it turns out it's 30% faster. So a huge time save throughout the run as a basic movement tech. And they would have had it a lot sooner if they had gone about doing that kind of testing themselves. And because they did, they found it. So now we want to go into, beyond just looking at what's already known, how can you find new knowledge? What are some methods we can employ? So we have grouped these together into a few catchy catchphrases. These are not meant to be entirely distinct. You don't want to tunnel vision yourself or silo yourself thinking in just one of these ways, but these are all frames you can apply to thinking about a problem or a game in order to come to new ideas. The first thing we want to talk about is new physics. This is a concept that comes up in, say, astrophysics or particle physics. The idea is to find things that are sort of at the edge of what's known. Try to create situations that expose a potential fuzziness in your understanding of the game, or maybe there's already things that you don't really know how they work, but you know that they are out there. So the first example I want to talk about is something I have a lot of experience with.
You're going to have to tell me which video to play for this one.
Let's talk about the one of the D-Boost ones.
You okay?
Can't see from here.
I'm sorry.
Let's do the one that has a bunch of Japanese text on it.
This one? Okay.
Right. And then yes, excellent. So this is a video that was posted by a Japanese, not even a runner, just a player of the game who happens to find a bunch of glitches and documented them on Twitter and YouTube. This was known like 5 years ago that you could do something funky with this damage barrier in the very first map of the game and get out of bounds. And unfortunately, getting out of bounds in this map is completely useless. Otherwise, we probably would have looked into this a lot sooner. But I saw this video. I tried to replicate it. I couldn't figure it out. And then I just gave up because I didn't know where to start. I couldn't really ask this person since we didn't speak the same language. But then eventually, someone else
Next video?
found the same trick. Let's try. Just keep trying.
Just keep trying them?
Yes, excellent. Good guess. So someone else found it, and they found the same thing purely by chance. And they came to our Discord and they asked, hey, does anyone know about this? And I was like, well, this looks a lot like something I saw a few years ago. Can you explain how you did it? And they told me that they were just mashing the tackle button, and they got a ground tackle in midair. You're supposed to get a separate kind of tackle, an aerial tackle in midair. But this ground tackle, you can cancel it into a jump, and then you can chain those together to get out of bounds. But that's still useless. So eventually, we looked even more into this. Someone found a new example where we could do this in a completely different way. Instead of using a damage barrier, it turns out that by melting yourself out of an icicle, if if you want to go back to that last video.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
But you can melt yourself out of an icicle, and that gives you the same kind of change of state in midair that lets you get that midair ground tackle. Eventually, we found a few different classifications of this trick. We called them D-boosts because we just named every variant after a different word that starts with the letter D. So we have damage boosts, we have dialogue boosts, we have defrost boosts where you melt yourself out of an icicle. We have a few others. We have a dive boost where if you go out of bounds water, you can do it too. And we ended up finding a bunch of useful applications for different variants of this trick. And that's only because someone pointed out this thing that I didn't understand, that the community didn't understand, and we dug into it, we found more uses for it, and it turned out to be useful all over the place. So next you want to talk about stuff from Control.
Yeah, so Control, there is a glitch in it called Shieldy McSorry. It was actually discovered completely on accident. The game doesn't actually have a New Game Plus mode built into it, so they were messing around with it with maybe making it a separate category with a glitch save file. And Brian Otto here, who was running the game very early on in its life, was messing around in New Game Plus, and he went out of bounds, pulled up the shield, and started going straight upwards. And he later that night found a couple other places to do it in. And for a good long time, we just didn't really think there was much to do with this. We kind of left it on the table. It takes about 2 minutes to go and get it anyways, even without a bounce skips. And so one day, I literally just started pushing buttons because at some point, it kind of it kind of just turns down to just trying stuff. So here's a video of me messing around with the cheat engine table where I was messing around with teleports. And I discovered, looking at very specific angles and pressing to sideways or backwards kind of lets us go forwards. And then here I labbed out, if my VLC will cooperate with me. I labbed out basically speeding up a skip we already did. If you look at the radar there, you can see that little arrow just zooming out of bounds. And then that kind of evolved into pretty much the most iconic glitch in the run because it wound up saving well over 8 minutes in the any percent category. And so as you can see, it just looks ridiculously fast. You just move at breakneck speeds. And all of that just came from one day sitting down and just pushing buttons.
You just melt through the walls with that one.
Yep. Moving right along, the engineering method.
So I'll talk about this. We have a few different things in engineering that we call the engineering method. What I want to talk about here is when you have a problem, you know what the problem is. Say there's a skip you want to do. You know if you just cross this gap, or if you just get into that loading zone, or if you just have this flag set, or if you could just get a little bit of extra height or a little bit of extra distance, you could do something. Well, that's when you start breaking out your toolbox and just trying stuff to see what works. You characterize things, you get yourself a set of tools that you can apply in a wide variety of scenarios, and you try them. The example I want to talk about is something we call Oni Island 4 one skip. There's a dungeon. In that dungeon, there's an interior area where we knew from a different category where we have infinite jumps that we can get out of bounds. So if you just want to, I can scrub through here. So this is a big section of the dungeon, which previously we had to complete. We had to go into this interior after we get Thunderstorm. We had to blow up the thing. We had to fall down. We got a key. We jump forward. And then I'll show you this little cool thing. There's a nice little labyrinth that we have to run through. This was fun, but it was slow. It took about 2 minutes to do this whole thing. And then at the end, we had to do
my bad.
the rest of the floor. We had to get all the way to here. There's a bunch of cutscenes in our way. We have to literally sit here while the game shows us that there's lava slowly rising to melt our face off. And then eventually we wind up in that loading zone right there to get to the next map. But the loading zone is always there, and we knew if you could just get out of bounds in another area of the map, we could get there a lot sooner. So the question was, how do you get out of bounds?
Which one next?
Let's just keep guessing.
Okay.
Right, excellent choice. So this was yet another case where I knew about something for a few years, but I didn't know completely how it was done. So we're going to skip forward in this video. He's going to get into the corner here. He's going to do an aerial tackle, but the aerial tackle isn't going to bounce. And then he's going to do another aerial tackle that does bounce, and you get out of bounds. The problem was I didn't realize that that air tackle that didn't bounce was critically important to making this work. As it turns out, that little hollow air tackle gets Amaterasu, the dog, into the corner in such a way that her back legs clip out of bounds. That is not enough to clip the whole dog out of bounds, but it is enough so that the game thinks she's tilted upwards because she's hanging off a ledge. She's on a slope. And it turns out that in this game, if you move up a slope, you get a little bit of a hop, a little bit of a boost into the air that still keeps you grounded until you start falling. So we go to the next video. Eventually, after testing it and messing around with it myself, I realized actually that does work and you can get a little boost. And then I went back in my head. I thought all of the tricks that I knew were just barely missing some height, and thought, can you set this same skew glitch up in those places? So here you can see I'm going to try this for a solid couple minutes, and it's not going to work. So there you go. That was a good attempt. I'm going to skip the rest of this just because it's really slow. But then you can see I get it again, hop, hop, and I'm out of bounds. And it turns out that was just barely enough height. It barely works. But because I realized this extra technique that was now in my toolbox for gaining height, I had an extra tool to solve this problem. And that's what the engineering method is all about. And we want to talk about near replicant. I'll also talk about this since the gracious person who gave us this info is not with us today on the panel. So,
Make sure you stay until the end of the video.
So the
this is flyer skip. We want to
Yeah,
talk about
flyer
flyers
skip.
slow.
problem is flyers are slow.
Yeah, so this is the skip. We can just talk about the skip.
Flyers slow video.
My bad.
There we go, there we go.
Okay.
So in this map, you're going to go directly to the right, and then near here is going to go into this room. You have to fight 3 waves of enemies. The enemies are all easy peasy. It's basically an auto-scroller. And then once the enemies are defeated, this door is going to open, and then you have to go and there's another door that opens, and then there's a fade out. So there's a loading trigger here. Well, the community knew that certain loading triggers, including this one, extend infinitely downward below the map. So that's pretty handy if you could get below the map some other way that was faster than just going through the doors here. And then they also knew of a separate technique where by using the weapon swap menu with Grimoire Weiss, you could actually gain a little bit of extra height. Turns out you can chain this together infinitely. It's just kind of slow for gaining height. So what you're going to see is instead of going to the right, we're going to go to the left, and then we're going to wind up in this top-down room where you gain a little bit of extra height off those elevators. You use the Grimoire Weiss menu. You're out of bounds here, but if you look carefully in the bottom right map, Nier is going to be falling really far out of bounds using another stalling technique, and you're going to hit the loading zone. So that saves a ton of time just because there's this really slow room. They knew there was a loading zone here. They knew they could hit it, and they just had to combine a couple tricks for knowing that the loading zones are infinitely downward, and all you have to do is get out of bounds and extend your airtime long enough so you don't void out completely. So the parallel to the engineering method is the scientific method. Instead of engineering method where you know there's a problem and you just try stuff to solve it and you characterize those tools, you build up a toolbox, scientific method is about analysis. So here's a case where you have a problem, but you want, instead of just applying stuff and seeing what works, you want to characterize that problem precisely so you know exactly what are the minimum requirements to make this possible. So you're going to find something you want to study, either a trick you want to figure out or a phenomenon you want to study. Maybe there's something you know a skip, it already works, but it's really inconsistent, or it's really precise and you're not sure why. Like, how do you have to twist the analog stick? Maybe it depends on the camera angle, you're not sure. Well, maybe you should take the time and study it in depth. Maybe you should try to apply some external tools that will help you. That might be something as complicated as full collision viewing, a cheat engine table, something where you're like going frame by frame with task level inputs. Or it could be something as universal as like literally just plugging in points into a graphing calculator if you have coordinates in space. and figuring out what is the shape of a trigger. And that's literally what I did in the top right there. You can see I have a bunch of points plotted up on Desmos, the online graphing calculator, which I strongly endorse. And I figured out, okay, so the shape of this trigger is spherical, because there's a couple points in the middle that still work. And also, it has a specific radius of something like 800 units. And then later we were able to get collision viewing by dumping the whole map file into Blender in a special way. And you can see I have put up all the different triggers that are relevant in different colors. So there's a big cylindrical trigger in the middle. There's a golden trigger which loads a specific entity that we need to be loaded. But then we also need to unload it and reload it. So then there's an unload trigger that's a little bigger. And the whole point of this is so that we can skip over a cutscene trigger that's in a big rectangle in blue. So if you can pull up the video for this. The target is study poorly understood. Yep. So this was a trick. We were trying to skip a fight in the game because the fight's really slow. We thought that what you had to do was sort of loop around and then jump at this rock in a specific way. And then you jump up and that flower blooms and you can use the hook shot to it. We call this vine. And then you can use the vine to pull you around some invisible walls. And that gets you over the fight trigger. The problem was, it looked real smooth there, right? But there were runs where I was failing this for a solid 5 minutes because I was jumping at it wrong. Or I thought I was jumping at the rock wrong. It turns out jumping at the rock is completely useless. It was a total waste of time. So if we go to the next video. This one should be good. So it turns out all you have to do, run forward a little bit, turn around. Oh, this is actually a slower version of it. So this was, I had figured out that you didn't need to jump at the rock, but I didn't know exactly how fast you needed to go or how far you needed to go. So you went forward, you went back. I did a jump. I thought the jump was important because I thought it was related to like sight lines around some invisible walls, and then it works. So next video. Thank you so much, Ashley. Turns out that this is really, really simple. You spawn in the middle of the unload and load trigger. You run forward, you run backward, you run forward again, and then the flowers bloomed. So the only reason I was able to figure that out is because I went into Cheat Engine, I found the structure for the entity for the flower, and I figured out what its state was. I found the value for its unload and load radius. Like I said, I used the graphing calculator with the coordinates from Amaterasu and the flower. And eventually I was able to figure out exactly what the parameters were to make it work and come up with a completely optimal method. So you want to talk about control,
Yeah,
Ashley?
and then the next example is a tech that we stole the name from Smash. We just called it wave dashing. So we had a new runner come in, and he just noticed a whole lot of different phenomenons when he was just pressing buttons. Like he was able to cancel dashes and just gain these slight bursts of speed. So this is wave dashing, and then he also found this one, and this one is like really, really sick. So cutting a dash into a melee and then into another dash, he was able to like stack the speed between the two. But the key one was more so the first wave dashing. We really had no way of knowing what was going on because we just didn't have any tools. So this actually inspired us to reverse engineer the game and hook up a speedometer to it. And using just a simple speedometer in the game, we were able to analyze what actually happens when you dash in this game with your speed. We learned that when you dash, the game applies, you're on sort of a bell curve with velocity that starts very steep, and then cutting the melee or the dash with the melee attack actually let us keep that speed. So we were able to keep the burst of speed from the start of the dash for way longer and go way further. So we knew for certain that it was definitely faster tech. And what that looked like is that sort of came to. Oh, we're having technical difficulties. One moment. Scientific.
Dashing.
Yeah, okay. The speedrunning, or the speedometer just wound up looking like this, and we were able to, figure out, oh, she moves at just about 6 meters per second, and then dashing gives us about 25 meters per second, and doing a wave dash gives us about 1,400, but it lasts way longer. So just having something as simple as speedometer just helps you gain a whole lot deeper understanding of just how the movement in your game works. So the next thing we want to talk about is serendipity.
Actually, you you want to, Witherman, do you want to talk about some stuff
Oh,
in
my bad.
Adventure?
Yeah, so scientific method. I actually do have a couple things I'll be bringing up. We'll be revisiting this later. There's going to be an entire slide. Where there are 3 people on the panel. Yeah, I am here. Don't worry.
Thank you.
There's a gigantic section where it's just going to be me talking for a while. But we're going to be getting there. And scientific method, as well as engineering method, are both going to be brought up as part of Serendipity, which we're going to get to later. Because in Sonic Adventure, there is a member of the community named Squeefy who has done so much great stuff for us. We're all stuck in the past. We all play on Dreamcast hardware. Every single one of us that plays the game currently, we're on hardware. We're playing on the Dreamcast. We have gotten to the point now where we have a resource allowing us to use the original collision viewer that was used by the developers on hardware. So a lot of our newer strats are found with the same collision viewers and tools that the developers were using when making the game. And we'll be seeing some of that later on down the line. But, just bringing that up now, there's a lot of scientific and engineering and whatnot that goes into this stuff across every community.
You were able to find that with like a GameShark code?
Basically, yeah. So a little bit of it was left over that inside the code, like a little bit of it. And Squeefy was able to create an entire new codebreaker code, which is very similar to Game Genie, that one-to-one recreates the entire thing, as well as fills in the missing bits that just weren't in the game initially.
Yeah, so that's another tool that's at your disposal. If you have something like a Game Genie, a GameShark, or Codebreaker, you can use that to edit memory. Maybe by having a little cheat. These cheats might already be out there in the wild, but by using that to study the game in an odd angle, that can help you find new stuff. So Serendipity, it's all about getting lucky. Sometimes you just find tricks by pure chance. Sometimes it's not even you. Sometimes it's another member of your community, or even like a casual runner, or a casual, not even a casual runner, a casual player of the game, streaming on Twitch or recording on YouTube, happens to chance upon something, and it turns out to be really useful. So I'll talk again. This was a random video that we didn't even know about for a couple years. Someone in our community happened to do a YouTube search for literally Okami glitches or Okami glitch. This is actually, I honestly recommend you do this. Search game name glitch on YouTube, on Reddit, on whatever, on old GameFAQs forums. You might find some useful information there. And it turns out by just jumping off that rainbow bridge in a special way, you can get out of bounds. That wasn't known. Turns out that's useless, but there's actually another thing that they found. If we scrub through, go back. Sorry.
You're good.
Turns out if you fall in this map in a particular location, you fall right into one of the building interiors in the map. In fact, the only building interior. It's complete luck that they got this. But you saw it for a second there, and there it is. That's a house that's on the top of a mountain. This whole map is a huge mountain, and it takes like 2 solid minutes of running to get up the mountain. Well, as it turns out, there's a faster way to get up the mountain, which is to get down the mountain. If we go to the next video, should be from the New Game All Brushes run, or New Game Plus All Brushes. I think you got it.
Oh. There we go.
There you go. So immediately upon entering this map, we want to go to the top of the mountain. We're going to use an infinite jump glitch to get out of bounds. We call this the Karmic Transformer glitch. That's not related. Point is, we get out of bounds. We line up using the map in a specific way so that we know exactly where we're falling, and we know exactly where that interior is. And plop, there you go. You run out of the house, and suddenly you're on top of the mountain, and you're ready to do the next skip. So it turns out that saves a good, 20 seconds. And we just weren't doing that for years because we didn't think, we had no idea that interior was so close to where we start out. And you want to talk about
so
Bill's Big Thrill.
Bill's Big Thrill.
Big Thrill.
So this was a casual streamer playing Half-Life 2 for the very first time.
The eponymous Bill.
Yep, and he happened to bump into a box that he hit, and then now he's just floating. And just so happened that a speedrunner was in his chat at the time, clipped this, shared it with the community, is like, what the hell is going on? So it was basically all hands on deck, went in to try and replicate what was going on here. Yep, he's just moving. He's just in a really weird glitch state, and he's clipping through walls and stuff. So all hands are on deck to try and replicate this. They figured out it was actually rubbing a physics prop against the very edge of the bounding box of a tire on a vehicle in the game, glitches the physics system out, and when you touch that, that glitches your physics hitbox out. And so they figured out ways of using that and manipulating it to teleport around, but there wasn't really a whole lot of application. And so it all sort of came, the breakthrough really was one day Wayzone told me his internet was out, and he just started trying stuff around with the glitch, like you do when your internet's out and you're bored. And he discovered that you could warp to the location that the player physics hitbox was, because, you know, one thing led to another. They figured out, oh, you can disjoint the two hitboxes in the game, and you can warp from where you actually are to where that hitbox is, and you can do that at the same time as a map transition. So if you've played Half-Life 2, there is a 15-minute cutscene right near the start of the game that you would have to sit through every single run. And the only way to get around that is to do some kind of warp. So he used, going back to prior art, he was actually inspired by the old engine routing on the very first iteration of the skip to get around this cutscene. And he was basically, here he is setting up the trick.
Bucket.
Yep. He was basically imitating what the old engine runners did with save warps. So I'm going to speed this up because it is quite a long setup. So basically they're in a glitch state, and like I said, there's two hitboxes on the player. One is for the physics engine and one is for regular movement. So those are disjointed at the moment, but whenever a physics prop touches where the physics hitbox is, that warps your actual position to the physics hitbox. So that's how he's setting up these warps. Does a jump crouch here, and that's how you update your physics position. And then he touches this wooden plank with it, and then he starts floating again. And he's going basically to where they set up the save warp on old engine runs. So I'm going to speed this up again. He's basically setting this position. It's going to take him a couple of tries because this was literally his first time ever doing it all in one go. So he got his position set up, went down, talked to Alex, grabbed this prop.
He's just gonna boop it on the nose.
Gonna boop it on the nose right when he goes into the map transition trigger. Any second now. Oh, you can see the chats all supporting him right down there. All right,
Boop.
Bunny hops into it, boops, and then there, he's out where he needs to go. So that was the very first iteration of the skip, and this is what it looks like in the modern day. So they do a very similar thing. They set the glitch up over here, and instead of setting up where the save warp was, which was very difficult because you actually had to gain a whole lot of speed going into it, he found a better way to set it up, which was actually closer to where you needed to launch on the next map. So that's around there, goes back down, waits for Alex to use the elevator. My VLC's wigging out again. And then they just smoothly go right into it here.
Boop.
Boop. There they go, right past the cutscene.
And so this is, exactly what I was talking about earlier. A random Twitch streamer, Bill the Thrill, found a weird phenomenon. They studied it. They got lucky that it was found, but it turns out it saves a ton of time, and it's really cool.
And it's worth mentioning that took like a year of refinement to really figure out like the actual application it had in the run. So
Yeah, so not only do you have to get lucky for Serendipity to work, you do have to put in the work to take advantage of that opportunity. So don't forget that. And then one other thing we can talk about with Serendipity. Witherman, you want to lead?
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about here. It may be one slide, but this is probably going to be the longest talking point of anything in the entire presentation. So, Sonic Adventure is a very funny game. It's a very funny game that had a very long time before it really got broken open. This game, despite what most people may think about 3D Sonics, Sonic Adventure 1998, the Dreamcast release of this game, is airtight. It is so hard to find something in this game. No wall wants to budge. Nothing wants to move. And if something ever gets found, it's not by a runner. It is by someone doing something obscene. So in this case as well, Squeefy, when he was first joining the community, had accidentally, he was doing some practice of hub world movement, hadn't quite, understood exactly what he was doing yet. And while he was one day practicing this jump right here, managed to find a way to die while entering Station Square. He just so happened to be in the point in the story where a cutscene will be playing, and this is the first known cutscene skip in the entire game. This alone just completely opened the floodgates for what this game would eventually become. This single trick right here, which was found near the middle of 2021, has completely changed the history of this game. The entire game is different now because of this one find by Squeefy. So to explain what's happening here in basic terms, Sonic is hitting a kill plane and then in the zombie state, to take the terminology from like Wind Waker. Now, when he's already dead, you then enter a cutscene trigger. So Sonic dies as soon as he clips out of bounds here because the kill plane is gigantic, and then you touch the load zone, which is connected to the doors, and then he falls. The cutscene plays, and the game doesn't know what to do. Sonic is dead, so it keeps the next story flag updated and moves on to the next beat of the story. That's really important to keep in mind because we've got a playlist now where we get to find multiple instances of this happening everywhere now. So many clips have been found, like this one here, where we hit a kill plane, enter a cutscene, and then that skips the cutscene. So much got found. The scientific method also gets used here a lot too, because now we know. Now we know that this is a phenomenon that occurs, and we have developed multiple tools and multiple strategies across different versions of the game to be able to do this. You'll notice that these last two have been in English. That's really important because right now almost everyone plays on the Japanese version of the game, because for whatever reason, when they brought Sonic Adventure to America, they also rewrote the entire game, so none of the collision is the same. Nothing works the way that it used to. And this is, at this point, only used in other stories, the one we're looking at now. But this is one of the funniest instances of cutscene skipping. We can go ahead and speed this one up a little bit because we need to have Sonic drown. So no matter what state you can get in, this was found by someone else on accident, you can get Sonic to drown on land in the cutscene. So every single one of these cutscene skips was found not necessarily on accident, but they were found by different runners doing absurd things over time. Half of them, I would say, were found on purpose, but the other half were just found by people making egregious mistakes. So this game's identity is now completely surrounded by fun little instances like this, where you'll find an absurd clip and then fall out of bounds. And also, talking about scientific method from earlier, you'll see these rainbows and circles and whatnot showing up. This is the in-game collision viewer. This is a little bit of a remnant that was left in the game that was then fully realized and put back together by Squeefy. So we now have access to the same tools and coordinate system that were used by the original developers. So this game is super cool, and we can go ahead and fast forward and go through a couple more of these, just showing off different ways and whatnot. This one trick has been used to define every single story. So you'll see every single character in the game in some way has some way to get out of bounds and touch a cutscene trigger. We've got so many of these now. And again, all of these come from one singular discovery in 2021 by a runner that wasn't even trying to do anything special, just try to practice some hub world movement. So to me, this game and this like whole scenario in general is kind of like the definition of what glitch hunting is all about. It was just one thing that led to another. There's just dominoes continue to fall, and the game gets more and more figured out as people start to do crazier and crazier stuff within this engine.
Want to show any more?
I think we want.
Even Amy.
Yeah, Amy, one of the coolest characters in the game now. You know, Sonic, it's got so many, barely any cutscenes even left in his story. Tails has the most cutscenes left in the story, but still has some of the biggest cutscene skips. Knuckles, practically out of cutscenes. That was the Amy frame walk, which we just saw, really funny. And then this one uses Burger Man. We're going to take Burger Man all the way with us over here, clip through the wall with him, then fall out of bounds. And, this is actually going to be setting up Cool Route. This one's absurd. So if we skip past Twinkle Park, we're going to have multiple cutscenes play at the same time just by abusing story flags really, really hard. So we're going to clip out of bounds here, go grab Burger Man again. This cutscene will play. Yeah, we fast forward through this. Then we're going to die, and when we die, another cutscene is going to start, and that one is also going to get skipped as soon as we exit Twinkle Park. So this is called Cool Route because it just completely breaks Amy's story and makes you play the entire thing backwards. But yeah, this is another cutscene skip with Tails where we're going to be going and grabbing No, yeah, we're grabbing Burger Man. We're going to be using him to clip through this. This is called fast food route, where we're going to be doing Speed Highway last. And then by doing Speed Highway early, we're able to exit it when we normally would in the story here. And then we can go to the hub world segment of where Speed Highway loads into. If we find a way to die during this by clipping through here with Burger Man as well.
Burger Man is a man of many talents.
Oh, and Burger Man is so useful. We use him to die a lot. And then, okay, gonna go, if we go back a little bit on this video, the only thing I want to show off here is this very beginning bit. So if you pause and go back to 1x speed, the very first few seconds of this.
Right here?
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
So this is a trick that, this is the last time I'm going to talk about Serendipity in general with Sonic Adventures. The last thing I want to talk about. So it's just before we enter Casinopolis, just that little bit there, like 1 or 2 seconds. This is a separate trick unrelated to cutscene skipping called FTB. I can't say the full name of the acronym out loud, but it involves a button that we're not a big fan of. So you can figure out the rest from there. So there's a button on the top of Casinopolis that you have to hit to enter the stage if you've ever played the game before. That button sucks because if you try to get to it quickly, the camera will freak out on every version of the game. And there's been multiple instances now where I have lost world record pace runs just trying to hit the button under Casinopolis. So in a bid for desperation at the very beginning of this, when I was super annoyed, I just started spin dashing at the door. And wouldn't you know, that door, the diagonal of it, just doesn't have collision. So FTB is a Japanese exclusive trick, the Japanese version of the game, where you can just clip straight through that door, and stuff like that gets found by complete accident, but it's a massive time save, helps a bunch. Sometimes you just need to do stuff. When you're playing a game, really when it comes down to it, if you really want to glitch on the game, just do stuff. Just throw yourself at a corner, throw yourself at a wall, look at what other people have done, and then just try seeing if you can do anything with it, because you never know when stuff will get found. That got found in 2023. It took over 20 years for someone to realize that door didn't have collision. Sometimes you just don't know. That's pretty much all I got with that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brings us to synthesis. Synthesis is, it might not sound like a different technique, and I don't want you to think about it as one yet again. Don't silo yourself. The idea is put stuff together that you already know about. Maybe there's multiple skips you already know about, but none of them are actually useful. Go back and see, maybe if you do this skip, or this technique and this technique together at the same time, it actually turns out to save you time, or it turns out to let you do something that's otherwise impossible. So the example that I brought up is something we call pot skip in New Game, in Ookami. So we have a very long video. We're going to fast forward real good through this one.
This one?
So this should be it. So I knew in this room there's some pots that you only see after you beat all of the devil gates in the room, all of the enemies. But their hitboxes are still there. I happened to just try this one day. I was like, hey, I wonder, those things, they're not visible, but maybe there's some way you can still destroy them. So I just tried using bombs, since the regular technique of slashing them doesn't work. And it turns out you can see there's little poison purple particle effects coming out because they are there. They're just, the devs made them invisible. They made them invisible to one type of attack, the one type of attack you could realistically use. But they didn't think that we could put the camera all the way up on the ledge here with another brush adventure technique, we call it. And it turns out that if they're all destroyed when you start that cutscene, when it's expecting to show them to you for the first time, you just get multiple cutscenes playing at once. You get walking while talking. The problem is this is completely useless. Walking while talking is not a very useful glitch in Okami because it tends to crash the game really hard and also give you all sorts of side effects that you don't actually want most of the time, including no clip. You might think having a no clip glitch would be really useful in this kind of game. It's not. It turns out it's takes 4 hours to beat the game with no clip because you can't gain any height. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we knew about this. I knew about this. And I made a video about it to document it because it was neat, it was interesting, and I just hoped someday someone will come back to this and find it. Well, turns out, if we go to our next video here, sure, eventually I figured out a way that we could get back into this dungeon with some later game abilities. The first part of this is getting across the city checkpoint area, so this takes you from the first arc of the game to the second out of 3. And there's a bunch of little pausing here. I'm doing a quick explanation of how this trick works. Basically, you got to go on some very slippery collision, jump on a very precise point on a rock that gives you a huge amount of momentum where you're sliding off the rock, but you start a tackle that keeps you grounded. You jump out of tackle, you do a wall bounce, or a wall jump, you do a wall bounce, and that gives you just barely enough height to get up onto this ledge and across the gorge. This is a really hard trick we call city checkpoint skip. It's very important in the run. It was already known it saved 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. But then if we go to the next video, well, this is another important part. We needed to get an ability early that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get in any reasonable amount of time. This is an optional ability called Fireburst. Well, we don't.
Oh,
That's not
my bad.
Fireburst.
It might be related to Fireburst. I don't know yet. This is another part of synthesis. It's synthesizing completely unrelated games. Anyway, so it turns out a Japanese runner, Tunakan, found a way to get out of bounds here. We can get into this restaurant. This restaurant is normally only available after you beat another dungeon that we could skip. And through this restaurant, we can get a special ability called Fireburst, which is completely optional. But it turns out it's mandatory in the speedrun because it's so damn helpful. And this Fireburst ability is a lot like Cherry Bomb, where it makes a big explosion, except the explosion's like 10 times bigger. So there's one more tool that we need to put together here. Like I said, there's a lot of skips that go into this. I think there's one that we missed, which is a half blue skip. I got a bridge skip, maybe.
Oh, okay. This one?
There we go. So
There we go.
we're gonna tab through this a bunch. Turns out there's a way you can set up a cabbage right next to a bear. The bear wants the cabbage. If you push the cabbage near the bear has a cutscene for accepting the cabbage graciously. But it turns out we can get the camera real far from the bear. We set up a cutscene at the same time as the bear eats the cabbage or hops on the cabbage. We use some rabbits. We feed them. That gives us control back. We now have a cutscene stored that gives us a special flag where the game doesn't want us to drown, so we can swim through the river, and that lets us skip the river. That lets us skip the dungeon that is we're actually is the target of this whole saga, this very long adventure to figure this out. So next video, which is where we actually synthesize everything together, the pot skip one.
This one?
Should be.
Okay.
So as it turns out, if we can get back to this dungeon way later by skipping it and skipping later into the game, we can get the Fireburst ability. And then we can do a little camera adventure here. All we need to do is draw one Fireburst in the middle. It blows up all 5, or all 6, I think, of the invisible pots. Then we just beat the rest of the enemies. And we're going to set up those simultaneous cutscenes right here. Draw the sunrise. And you can see multiple fade-outs happening at once, and we wind up right in the middle of the room, and we completely skip a like 20-second long unskippable cutscene in this version. If you watched the Okami run yesterday, you'll have noticed they did skip that cutscene in that version, but it's impossible to skip in this version because they changed the cutscene skip mechanic from requiring 1 button press to 2, and there's only 1 frame where you can skip it, which is not enough times to press the skip button twice if you can do the math. So we have to have this entirely other convoluted way to skip the cutscene, and it turns out by putting all this together, it saves another 15 seconds off the route. So that's synthesis, combining a bunch of things together that were already known. Some were useless, some were useful, but if you do them all at once, it saves time. And this is another one that's a contribution from one of our absentees, one of our gracious contributors over Discord. So this is in Drakengard 3 again. They call it DoD 3 just because that's the Japanese name, Dragoon.
Is this the first video?
Yep, and
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
you're going to see our main character here is going to do a little glitch to get a bunch of extra height by using the weapon pause mechanic, weapon swap. So you can see you get up onto this pillar. It's very handy. So they knew about this mechanic. They had already used it in a couple other skips. But then there's a totally separate mechanic that you need to make this work. Cool trick we call cool movement. You can see we get pushed along. This is taking advantage of a mechanic in the game where you can pause in midair by swapping weapons in a particular way. But then also, by doing it against the ceiling, it turns out in this game, the camera has solid collision. Who knows why? But if you can get the character frozen in midair and get the camera pushed up against the character by using a ceiling all at once, you can actually just soar forward in midair. So this was pretty neat. It's pretty fast. It is useful in other places. But by using that extra height glitch, we can get out of bounds here. We can get onto the water. Turns out our main character here has a little bit of divine powers. You can walk on water. But you can also fall through the water by going to a little farther out of bounds here. I'm going to see that in a bit, just navigating through the out of bounds water. And then we're going to use that weapon swap glitch, cool movement, TM. And that is going to get us way back inbounds. So the only way we can get back inbounds, since there's so much void space out there, is by using cool movement. And that gets you to a nice loading zone and skips a huge like shop area.
Really, really cool stuff.
So
Yeah, that movement is very cool.
yes, it's a great name for a trick. By the way, one reward for attending this panel: if you discover a trick, you have my permission to name it whatever you want. As
Within reason.
people may rename it for you. There have been times where I tried to name a trick and then it didn't stick because someone else came up with a better name. But
I've named a lot of tricks. See,
Rod-
that's a big thing about glitch hunting, actually. Yeah, you get to name a lot of really funny. You should make sure you learn all this stuff because you get to be really funny. You get to make your game really funny.
broadly speaking, if you discover a trick, you have first rights to name it as long as you choose a half-decent name that people can remember. So that is it for the first part of our presentation. We talked about a bunch of different techniques, a bunch of different frames you can apply when thinking about glitch hunting. Now we're going to rapid fire through a huge number of examples of glitches that we call universal. Maybe not in your game, so it's not truly universal, but they are in a bunch of games, so you might want to think, maybe this can be helpful to me. So the reason why this happens, all computers inherit the original sin. That's a very poetic way of saying all computers are programmed in roughly the same way by roughly the same kinds of humans who are trained in roughly the same kinds of programming, which means that a lot of games are programmed with the same kinds of basic mechanics, same kind of engines, and they have very similar kinds of glitches, similar design errors, similar programming mistakes, similar edge cases that you might see, especially if they are literally in the same engine. If you are playing, say, a game that it has a series, multiple sequels that are roughly similar, there's a good chance that are made in the same engine, or maybe different games not in the same series from the same developer might be in the same engine. Nowadays, you see a lot of games made in commercial engines, and those often have similar kinds of skips.
That's very true. There's a lot of Unreal games will end up sharing a lot of the same stuff. A lot of 3D Unity games, and especially 2D Unity games, will end up sharing a lot of the same clips and zips as well. Early Cuphead was very much defined by its early 2D and by its early Unity 2D zips. A lot of those don't exist as much anymore because Unity's changed the way that it handles collision, but older versions of Cuphead look very similar to other 2D Unity games.
Yep. And this ties back into prior art. If you know of a community already that has speedrunning another game from the same developer in the same series or in the same engine as the game you want to run or you want to glitch hunt in, talk to those people. Ask if maybe they have any ideas of things you can do or any tricks they already know. First class of those that we want to talk about is dialogue storage or walking while talking. This is two pretty closely related families of glitches that show up in a lot of games. And it's the general concept that somehow, some way, you can maintain control of your character in a state like a cutscene or some dialogue where you're not supposed to have control, or maybe even a menu. So the first example we want to pull up is half loose skip again. This is something we described earlier. It's a way of swimming across the river. The important thing here is that we're setting up a situation where two cutscenes are playing at the same time, and we skip one halfway through the other. And that's what lets us to store one of those cutscenes in a way that gives us an extra flag. The game sort of thinks we're still in dialogue. You're not supposed to drown during dialogue, so it allows you to swim through water that would normally cause you to drown instantly. So just getting back through it as a quick reminder. Oh, let's get past it. This is all about lining up two cutscenes together in a very special way. Normally it would be a frame-perfect trick, but we actually use another set of dialogue to queue up the bare cutscene, and then that gives us a single frame where we can use the brush to activate another cutscene. So it's no longer frame-perfect. It's instead completely bufferable. And then all we need to do is hop in this river, this rushing rapids that would normally sweep you away. We swim right through it. And that was a huge surprise when we found out about it. But by finding a good setup for it, we were able to activate walking, well, sort of cutscene storage there. Next, you want to talk about Near Automata.
Near Automata, yeah. Right dab in the middle of the run, we have a glitch called extended dialogue storage, which is actually found by Yark, the guy who contributed to the panel. So basically what we do is we come over to this guy in the amusement park, and we walk onto him, and we start talking to him. At the same time, we let out an attack to kill him. And then we leave the dialogue up on screen. We skip past it once, and he wants to offer us some stamps. He says if you collect them, you'll get a prize. We're not really interested in that, so through rebinding our keys to the keyboard and using spacebar to jump, we're able to go out of bounds, hit a progression trigger, and then go and start a cutscene that initiates a boss fight. This boss fight is actually completely a complete auto-scroller because it's just waiting for dialogue to go through, but by watching this cutscene and letting that start with this dialogue on screen, the game thinks, oh, you're already in a conversation. We can't start this next character's dialogue. So what happens is, if we can seek fast enough, these are our two antagonists. The fight just ends, just like that. And we skip it and go on to the next.
So next we'll talk about Wind Waker.
Wind Waker.
So if you're in the audience or if you're watching and you've played some of these games, I know about some of these glitches. I've not necessarily been a member of all these communities myself. I'm going to talk about some of these things, like I know what I'm talking about. Please forgive me if I make a mistake. The important thing is that these are good examples. So this is Wind Waker. If you've played Wind Waker before, or if you've watched speedruns of it, you might know that the original version has a very well-used glitch called storage. And by using storage, you can store a dialogue. You can activate it while you still have control over Link. And it turns out by doing that, you can actually gain control over Link while you have, for example, the Wind Waker menu up. And that freezes the camera in a particular way that by just holding up, you can make sure that every single frame, Link is turning around and around. And so that lets you build up speed in the water because the game keeps trying to make you go slower, but it actually makes you go faster. But also, you can simultaneously have dialogue up while you have this sort of camera lock state up. And then by closing the dialogue, you activate storage again. And that's where the walking while talking part of it comes out. And if you move on to the next one, we can talk about Sonic 06.
Yeah. So I'll talk about this one. This is, we're going to be actually watching almost the entirety of the any percent run for Sonic 06 here. So the vast majority of the any percent run is going to be this. You talk to this one woman and you homing attack her over and over to slowly move her. We're going to be moving her all the way over to the water, and in doing so, we get to keep the dialogue box, the dialogue prompt from the yes, no. And by keeping that and then saying yes in the middle of the next mission, it spawns us inside of one of Shadow's missions in Shadow Story. Then we leave that, then we talk to another NPC, and the game just kind of doesn't know what to do. So it's like, what if I ended?
We're done.
So that's an example of just how powerful dialogue storage can be. Sometimes things in memory don't make a lot of sense, because again, all computers share the original sin. They are all made by humans. So in such, things in memory are always going to be in weird places. Missions, dialogue, etc. If you can exploit these in one game, you can typically find them somewhere else.
Okay, so this is something that might seem a little more mundane, animation canceling. This comes up a lot anytime you have the option to take multiple actions in sequence. Oftentimes, the developers, either intentionally or unintentionally, will let you end one action through another faster than you could normally end it in some other way. So, first example here, yet again, this is probably the very most boring example you're going to see today is the one from Okami.
There we go.
With the grounded attack jump cancel. So all we're going to do here, we're going to make our friend here, Blight, the arc boss, vulnerable. We're going to slash his sword out of the air. And we want to one-cycle this fight, but we don't have a whole lot of damage output because we're pretty weak in this run. So we do 3 hits on the ground, and then we immediately jump. If you tried to do 3 hits on the ground and then another 3 hits, it would take it, but the boss isn't vulnerable for long enough. The 3rd hit would miss by just a few frames. But it turns out, even though you have to wait in order to attack again after you do the 3rd hit on the ground, you can jump at any time during your grounded combo and start doing your aerial attack instantly right above the ground. And that gives you just enough hits to take out the boss in one cycle. So that's just about the minimum amount of benefit from animation canceling is literally canceling the waiting of the animation.
So then next, just gonna circle back to control, which I don't even actually have a clip for, but basically the wave dash, we're canceling the melee attack with a dash, and that just lets us preserve our speed. After that, we're gonna get some Star Wars in here. This is from Jedi Academy. So in this game, when you press 1 to turn off your lightsaber, your character does a put away animation, but for whatever reason, when you start an attack while your saber's already in an animation, it cuts the wind up. So they use that pretty much anywhere they swing the saber to attack an enemy in this game. So right here, you'll see at the bottom the inventory comes up, and they just do an instant swing to kill those 2 stormtroopers, and then a regular swing to kill this last guy, in literally less than like 2 seconds. After that, Star Wars Republic Commando. These are droid dispensers. They basically spawn enemies endlessly, and they take about 20 seconds of real time to blow up. However, you can cancel any melee attack or, well, any first-person animation by tapping the reload key. So as you can see, we just rapid-fire melee attacks on this thing, and boom, it's gone. We're done. And then last example is in Nier Automata. There's actually a self-destruct function. If you've played the game casually, you may or may not know what that's intended to do, but that's not important here. What is important is that you can tap it, and that will basically stop any animation that you are in. So we use that for general movement tech. This is spear dashing. So what we're doing is a light into a heavy attack with the spear, and then we're able to loop that back over and over again because that specific attack pushes us very far forward, very fast. The other application of this tech is when we do a high jump. Let's see if I can get back to where I was. Okay, that's spear dashing. And then, okay, right here, we're doing a high jump. So you can do a lift into a heavy, jump heavy, and then do another heavy after a self-destruct attack. It almost seems like the devs were aware of this because they only let you do one SD heavy in your chain, which is kind of cool to me because that wasn't actually capped in the very first version of the game released in Japan, but it is a limitation that actually does make the routing in this game a little bit more interesting. So moving right along. We're looking at dialogue canceling. You want to talk about Portal 2 here?
Sure, I can. This is another one that I don't fully have the knowledge to explain.
I can cover it then.
Sure.
So essentially, this is the chamber where Gladys calls you fat, right? You go up the thing the first time. Wheatley's gonna talk to you, and then you come back down. The thing is broken because you're too fat for it or whatever. But there's actually a trigger that you're supposed to hit twice, and if you crouch at just the right time, you will start the second round of dialogue from Gladys. So if you time it just right, like he does here, then Gladys will actually cancel her first line, and then you're ready to go ahead and proceed with the test chamber. The next thing is from DOD 3. Where is this?
Do we not have
Oh
it?
yeah, Octa.
I thought we had this, but okay, we'll just skip over it.
That's fine. We have plenty of examples.
Yep, and so in Nier Automata, in various parts of the run, we don't want our partner to speak to us, specifically 9S, he can just shut up. So right here is an example where we will actually talk to him, but we won't say anything to him. We'll just bring up the quick little animation, or quick little interaction menu to change his combat style. As we walk over a trigger, he will start talking to us. In this instance, he's telling us how to save our game. Yeah, so this is what you would be skipping. You go into a slow walk, and he tells you, oh, you have to save your game. Be sure to save often because the game doesn't auto-save, right? So by pulling up the dialogue just before walking over that line, we're able to skip all of that. And then the last example here is right at the beginning of the second fight with Adam in this game. This is pretty much gated because we're not allowed to attack him. He's going to give us a huge long monologue. This skip is called mansplaining for that reason. So while he's yapping along, we're going to come over here and touch this elevator. So whenever we walk into this elevator, the pod is scripted to tell us to stay in our location. And so we actually do 2 things here. You can actually pat the pod on the head, and there's like a nice little dialogue exchange there. So that will cancel the pod's dialogue that it will say once we trigger the entering the elevator, and we actually enter that elevator with the pat animation using her butt. So this is called To Butsia for that reason, because it was found by, what was his name?
Bubsia.
Bubsia, yes. And it looks just like that. So we pat the pod on the head, trigger the thing with our butt, and then we buff up, and then the fight starts. And then now bunny hopping, fan favorite, right? Not really bunny hopping when we're talking about air strafing, we're talking specifically about bypassing friction because, air acceleration is typically only in Source or Quake related games, but we're obviously going to show the example from Half-Life.
General idea here is anytime you can figure out a way to make the game not slow you down as much, if you can gain speed and keep it, that's what we're talking about here.
Yep. So in Half-Life, here we get a huge burst of speed from the grenade launch, and we just maintain that through really well-timed bunny hops. Okami slow popping.
This one's a much less exciting than Half-Life 1, but the gist is, we figured out that in this game, as it turns out, if you're going up a slope, the game tries to slow you down just by a teensy bit to make it look like Amaterasu is struggling. And if you're moving down a slope, you actually get a little bit of speed boost, just like you do in real life. It's a pretty minor speed boost, something like 5%, but as it turns out, the game only updates that speed boost when you're in the regular running animation. So if you just keep on hopping, so you never fully enter back into a run, you just keep on going from the landing animation back into a jumping animation, you just keep on hopping, and you maintain that speed boost. We'll skip the video of that one. It's pretty mundane.
I don't know where the timestamp is for this one. This is where I basically ran out of time.
Oh,
That's
sure
fair.
thing. Just click about, I'm going to guess 12 minutes in.
12 minutes in. Okay.
Oh, that is nowhere close. 24 minutes in.
24 minutes in.
We're gonna
Alright.
binary search this one. 5 more minutes.
We'll go 27.
Back 3.
So 25 minutes.
Forward 1. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. And here.
Oh, right here. There we go.
Okay, so we have a big downward hill here. And just in a little bit, you're going to see Amaterasu start to hop, 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 and she just can't stop. And the whole idea is because we reached pretty much the steepest point in the slope, we're going to preserve that extra speed until we can reach this extra vine that lets us get a bunch more speed, which is totally unrelated. Anyway, next example. This is one that is not bunny hopping, but it is the same fundamental concept. And that is in Ocarina of Time. Oh, well, okay. In Twilight Princess, this is very similar. As it turns out, in this game, if on frame perfectly you move from moving completely forward to moving just barely backwards, Wolf Link here will turn around. Also, regular Link will do the same thing. And you'll continue moving forward, but with no friction and no penalty for moving up hills. And you can actually achieve the same thing by just oscillating left and right very rapidly, although that one is task perfect, so it's not completely useful to real runners. And then the Ocarina of Time example.
Which one is that going to be?
Might look like, there we
Oh,
go.
there it is, yeah.
You'll know it when you see it. So in this game, there's a couple animations where, for example, if you're holding just outside the dead zone, you can actually get an endless slide because the game doesn't apply friction to Link when he's in this little shuffling animation, and also when he's in the animation of shielding but trying to pick up an object, which is what you use the 2 bombs here. You get blown up by one bomb, but you're trying to pick up the other bomb. The explosion is sending you backwards. Link wants to pick up the bomb, but you're holding it with the shield, and you just go zooming backwards. And the game doesn't slow you down because you're in this special state that bypasses grounded friction. And that's all we have for this slide. Next, this is one we almost brought up a little earlier. This is about not limiting negative speed. Lots of games do this. This is a fan favorite. We're going to show a couple examples here. So it turns out in
So talking about it, they usually have a hard cap for forward velocity, and programmers forget to use the math.absolute function, which returns, instead of a negative number, it'll always return a positive number. So that gives us unexpected behavior. So we're going to talk about the iconic SM64 BLJ.
Yep, so in this game, the game was programmed so that your speed is above a certain value when you're doing a long jump. It maxes it out, it just reduces back to that limit. But it turns out that negative numbers are also less than the cap, even if they're a lot bigger than the cap. because you use a signed, they use the signed comparison when they really should have used an unsigned comparison. And so as long as you're moving backwards and you're hitting the ground often enough so that your air friction doesn't slow you down too much, this is a weird case where air friction is more of a worry, you can just keep on BLJing. Each BLJ adds a little bit more speed in the negative direction, and it doesn't get capped. And that's so much speed you can actually clip through solid collision in this game.
And then also, like, for this example as well, this is another example of a speedometer being used. There's a speedometer in the top left. So
Yep.
you can see just exactly how fast, or in this case, negative fast Mario is going.
So the M here stands for minus. Very creative use of the in-game font.
And then a very famous source engine one, which has affected countless games. Is
Another case of same engine being useful.
backwards bunny hopping. So basically, the very first version of Half-Life 2 had forwards bunny hopping, and the devs for some reason decided to patch that out. But they didn't actually check how which direction you were going. They just checked which movement keys you were pressing. So the community found that if you turn your camera around and don't press forwards and keep jumping, you get an exponential speed boost. And this also applies if you were facing forwards and you tap back right before you land. So that's basically how this absolutely cracked out tech works.
And then Wind Waker with super swimming.
Is that gonna be
The idea here is that all you have to do is turn around in the water. The game is going to try to help you turn around. It's actually trying to help you speed up in this case. But all it does is apply a little bit of negative speed in the direction you were facing, so that you're now moving a little bit in the direction you're going to be facing. But if you can somehow turn around every single frame, you're just going to be getting a negative speed added every single frame. And by doing this rapidly, for example, by freezing the camera in place, so you just have to hold up, Link wants to turn around in the direction that you're pointing, but the camera turns around right with him, thanks to this camera lock glitch. And you can just build up tons of speed. You can see on the mini-map the triangle is just alternating back and forward and slowly rotating, because you're not quite turning around perfectly. And you just go zooming across the ocean, and you don't need no boat. And you get to the island so fast that it hasn't even loaded in yet. This is another example where there would be a forward speed cap if you tried to turn around during that after you lose the camera lock. You would actually stop pretty much on the spot, but thanks to the lack of a negative speed cap, you can just go zooming.
So next slide. Race conditions.
Race conditions. This is something that it's a term I stole from more of like network security or software security. This is an idea where if you have two different threads in a program, two different parts of the program that are running hand in hand, trying to do different things, sometimes they try to touch the same piece of memory or the same piece of data, and they mess with each other because the programmers didn't realize that things might interrupt each other. One piece of code might be trying to touch the memory twice in quick succession, but then right in between those accesses, another piece of code is accessing it. This application of this term is a little bit different. We're sort of stretching the definition here. The idea is, rather than having two pieces of code simultaneously, you're having two functions of the game happen simultaneously. So for example, maybe you are trying to do two attacks at the same time, or you're trying to enter a cutscene and open a menu at the same time, or in rare cases, you can actually just open the same menu twice at the same time if you press the buttons fast enough. Any time where the game is expecting something to be scripted and lead one thing into the next, if you can shove one little interruption in the middle, you might be able to break the flow in a big way. So this is a pretty mundane example. This is a equip swap in Ocarina of Time. It turns out there's multiple sub-screens to the pause menu, and the game is trying to prevent you from equipping certain items that are invalid for example, whether you're adult or child Link. A child Link can't use certain items because they're just too heavy for him, and adult Link can't use certain items because they're too big for they're too small for his big hands, like the boomerang. Can't toss a boomerang. But turns out the game stores the usability of the item on your current cursor, or on the cursor that you will have when you enter the subscreen. But it also stores where your cursor was when you left the subscreen, and it doesn't update the former for about a single frame. So if you swap subscreens in a very particular way, you can get it to the point where the game thinks that you have highlighted one item, and it thinks that item is usable, but you actually have highlighted another item, and if you try to equip it, you equip an unusable item on one of your C buttons. And this is a frame-perfect trick because the menu in this case runs at 30 FPS in this game because Ocarina of Time is really cracked and it runs at 3 different frame rates depending on the situation. And you can't pause buffer it because you are already in the pause menu. So that's just a little case where you have a single frame where you can get a word in sideways, so to speak. You can use you can equip one item while the game thinks you shouldn't be able to. So let's go to the next one. Shieldy,
Slidey McGunny.
Slidey McGunny. Lots of great names in this one.
I don't think I have a video for that one, but
It's okay.
essentially the tech boils down to we open up our loadout menu at the same time that we finish an interaction with the elevator. We switch to the collectible screen, play a multimedia file for a few seconds, and then go to a different floor. And for whatever reason, that unloads our character model, and that lets us clip our camera through walls and stuff like that. Next is Skyward Sword.
You got Skyward Sword.
Is that gonna be?
Back in Time, maybe?
Oh, that's me.
That's
Good
you.
one.
Back in.
You want to go first?
I can go first. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a super clip and yeet. So Billy Hatcher's a very weird game, but this specifically works very similar to Koopa the Quick Race, if you've seen those before from some more popular games. What you want to do for this is there is a bridge that King Klippen will be trying to cross over, but this game's render distance is very low, and if you manipulate the render distance to spawn the bridge right as soon as King Klippen's going to get next to it, it freaks him out, so he decides to kill himself. And whenever he does that, it makes him run really, really fast. And he runs way faster than he's supposed to and spawns an invisible floor under him and flies right to the end of the stage, meaning that this auto-scroller can just have like 25 seconds cut off of it because he has a little penguin panic attack.
There he is. Klippen.
There's King Klippen. He spawned the bridge and he's like, okay, I'm over this. And then he's going to do a really big jump that he's not really supposed to be able to do, and he just shows up here.
And that's otherwise an auto-scroller, right?
Yeah, otherwise as an auto-scroller, that's a time save that doesn't really make a ton of sense. It's mostly just because he has two different pathways that he can be taking at any given time. The one for the bridge not being there in which he'll jump, and the pathway for whenever the bridge is there if you're close to him. So by spawning the bridge after he's already made a decision, it makes him try to have, it's like a fail-safe that happens where he'll just end up dying, and then it makes him create a new fail-safe where he'll get to the end regardless of where he actually is.
Okay. Full disclosure, I'm seeing a lot of videos we had set up that are missing now.
That's okay.
So if there are any that you want to just chat over and then we can just move on pretty quickly, I think we're getting close to our time limit here.
Sure thing. So I'll mention Skyward Sword, even though you're not going to see this beautiful game. Skyward Sword has Back in Time. It turns out Wind Waker and Twilight Princess also have Back in Time. They're just not quite the same. All three games run on a similar base engine, and the gist is all you have to do to get Back in Time is void out and reset the console at basically the same moment. It's actually not as precise as it seems. They do it lots. And by doing this, you can get the game to a state where it's partially playable on the title screen. And in Skyward Sword, you take further advantage of this because you can actually play while selecting a save. And by doing this, you can make the game load certain flags from the save, but then have them actually manifest on another save on a different map, which can have all sorts of wild effects. If you ever watched a modern Skyward Sword run, you'll see just how broken that game gets and how much, like a significant percentage of the run is played on the title screen just for that reason. And then you want to talk about Yes Clip?
I can talk about Yes Clip. I remember we have one. We have the video right here. Okay. So Yes Clip is a tech in Half-Life 2, where by exiting the airboat at the same time that they're that they enter a level transition trigger, by positioning the boat outside of the localization point, basically there's a box on each level change where any entity in that box is going to get duplicated to the next map. If the airboat is not in that box, when you go to the next map, it'll get deleted. So what's happening is they exit the airboat, and at the same frame, they go to a new map, and the airboat gets deleted, and that gives them no clip, effectively. So they basically no clip all the way through to the next map until they get touched by a barnacle tongue, and that, for some reason, resets some of the movement flags so they can move around normally, but the physics state is a little bit strange. Moving ahead a fair bit. From this point onward, if they wanted to clip through a wall, they just have to pick up a prop, position it between themselves and the wall, and then move at such a speed that they can go phase right through the wall after a second. I can show you an example of that right up here. So you'll see here's a puzzle, bi-puzzle, and then here's a gated cutscene. We're gonna pick up this barrel-looking thing and then just go right through it. And they effectively use that for the rest of the run, all the way up until the Citadel.
And they call that yes clip because it's like no clip, but it's allowed.
Gonna move on.
Yep, we'll blitz through the rest of this.
What's
So
that?
we got
Okay.
frame rate dependent physics. You want to talk about this one?
Yep. So this is very much a PC thing. For many different reasons, running games at variable frame rates is actually an unsolved problem. There is no perfect way to do that or accommodate that in your game. And you can see an example of this even in a game as new as Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which was on stage yesterday. Pretty early on, if there's a particular mantle we do, and by capping the frame rate to 24, which is the lowest the game lets us do in the menu, we actually get just enough height to get up onto the top of that windowsill you see in the slide on the right, and that lets us jump out of bounds. Quake 3 and its descendants, there are several different games on the Quake 3 engine, they are all affected the physics are very heavily influenced by running at different frame rates because each frame, your velocity is rounded to a whole integer number. So you can see on the right, actually, there is a graph showing velocity in units per second and how that correlates to each frame rate value that the game lets you set. So 333 being the fastest, 125 being the second fastest, and 143 and 166 being the shortest. In Half-Life 1, unrelated example is for some reason the speed at which that NPCs will turn to face certain things is tied to the frame rate. So if you are running at over 100 FPS or more, they basically turn in super slow motion. So at any point that the runners are waiting for an NPC to turn and interact with something, they will hit a hotkey and toggle to 20 FPS. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, for some reason, they programmed the combat knife to work like a lightsaber, so each frame that it registers a hit inside of something that counts as damage. It will register damage. So they actually do a category split between 60 and 120 FPS, and whenever they fight the G1 boss, it's actually 15 hits with the knife to take down G1 at 120 FPS, and then at 60 FPS, it is 35, so over double that.
Do we have the video for that one?
I
actually want to see that one.
I don't. If we do, it's not even going to be cut down. Oh, we're gonna have to scrub around here.
We can skip it.
Okay, I see the splits. G1. So this is a 120 FPS run.
There we go. So in this game, the knife works like a lightsaber. It just hits every frame that it's in the enemy, and it turns out if there's more frames, there's more hits, so the enemy dies faster.
Boom, just like that. And then at 60 FPS, we're gonna guess that 10-minute sweet spot again.
Yeah, probably.
Or maybe we're a bit ahead. I'm not sure. Bear with us here. Oh, there we go. He lets the cutscene play for a bit. There we go.
How many more hits this takes?
As you can see, this fight is much slower. He's moving position. And to be fair, some of this is execution based, but it is still more than double the hits, which just doesn't really make sense. There we go. So much slower fight at 60 FPS. And then the last thing is near replicant ladder clip. I'm not sure.
We can skip that one.
Yeah, we don't have the time for that. So basically, low FPS, you clip through a ladder. At high FPS, you cannot clip through the ladder. Moving on.
So zipping comes up a lot in particularly 2D games, not unheard of for 3D games. The idea is that, especially in tile-based 2D games, if you find yourself, your character inside a tile, their collision will work by simply pushing you right back out. But it turns out, commonly the way this is programmed is they push you in the opposite direction that you're moving or that you're facing. And if you're actually moving in a direction that they don't expect, you can actually get yourself pushed further into the collision, often at very high speed. So the classic example is going to be Mega Man.
Oh, yep. Mega Man
here.
zip.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite examples of zipping too, because this is a great one where you're using the magnet beam to actually set yourself up for the zip. So you'll be grabbing the magnet beam early. Then you have a lot of really funny ones here where you'll be scrolling past almost every screen for the rest of the game by just setting up these zips where you cross gigantic distances. So this skipped an entire puzzle section here by using the magnet beam. Then Sonic the Hedgehog also has a lot of really fast zips. So if we can go to that video as well, you'll be able to use the Sonic one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So here's an example from Sonic 1. Joey Baby was actually in the audience a bit ago, which is very funny that he was here. But in Sonic the Hedgehog, in the glitch categories, you'll be using zips like this to cross entire acts. So this stage is completely nullified by a series of very powerful zips, which you can see the inputs for at the bottom of the screen. So a lot of 2D games are defined by their zips, and Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man are both blue, and they're both defined by it.
Super Mario World.
And Super Mario World, we've got this very fun one here as well. There's not a lot of instances of zipping in this game, but you can zip using these yellow flipper blocks, and it saves a lot of time here in Special World 1.
And that one's a result of a limitation in how many blocks can be flipping at once, right?
Right.
So you flip some extra ones, you end up pushed into a solid one. The game tries to push you down. It can actually push you down so far you get clipped off the bottom of the screen and die if you're not careful. Here's an example from A Link to the Past. This is a unique example of something that isn't a side-scroller. It's a top-down game. But it turns out by sort of wiggling into a corner, you can convince the game that you're not really moving into it even though you are. And that lets you get through solid collision, through a solid tile. You get off the map, you wind up on the wrong layer by jumping off a cliff in the wrong direction, so you jump up it instead of down. And suddenly you can bypass all the walls. So here you go. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And you're suddenly zipped through the whole map.
And that is the entire run, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the entire game. You can go straight to the end credits there.
Yeah, because the whole game is literally on simply 2 big sheets. And if you can clip out of bounds, you can just go directly to the end room. So thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
As unofficial representatives of the fake University of Speedrunning at SG 2025, we're pleased to present you all your Bachelor of Speed Science, your BSS degree. You are now certified speed scientists and glitch hunters, and you're free to go out there and hunt glitches in your own games. Thank you.
Find some glitches and make some funny names.
So I know we've gone on quite long, about 90 minutes. Thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah,
if
thank you
anyone
so
is
much,
still
guys.
willing to hang out and ask questions, feel free. If you want to raise your hand, if you want to come up afterwards.
But yeah.
All right.
If not,
thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it. That went so far over.
Yeah.
Great.
That was
Well,
fun though.
we started late though too, didn't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah, we started late.
We started late. We had some long-winded segments, but I think we did good.